close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. Finding life along the way, melodies we haven't played. No, I don't want no rest. Echoing around these walls, fighting to create.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Happy Thursday. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Hope you're having a good day, or you had a good day. So tonight we're going to start off with just going over the study plan. We're going to introduce, if you followed me on Twitter, then you're already aware, a new segment that I kind of just popped into my head, actually. I was on my way home from the gym one day, and it popped into my head that I was like, this would be kind of cool to get. That way others, you can kind of show off your work, and it could be more collaborative. But a new segment called Automation in the Wild. And the name's kind of just came off the top. So that definitely could change, but I just thought I think it's cool to see and talk about what everyone's doing as it relates to automation, right? So I know personally I see people on Twitter that, make scripts that could just simply collect show version, right, from Cisco network devices. I see others that have large CICD pipelines built out, right? So where they're editing a YAML file that then translates to configuration that then pushes the configuration out to the network, or using Terraform, to stand up resources, and that could be servers, or it could be other, virtualized hosts, or network functions. So I just think it'd be cool, especially having, a platform here to kind of talk about what's going on outside of me and my DevNet expert. So I wanted to start it. I think I'm going to, we'll see how it goes. And as others, hopefully, I have more people that, see the messaging. I'll try to get the messaging out a little more. And just if you're watching, anything, big, small, does not matter. It could be a simple script. It could be a whole blown application. It could be something that you've worked on for years. Doesn't matter. I'm just looking. It's not even like me to grill you or anything like that. It's really just for me, without having much background or context into what you're doing, to just read through code or read through documentation that you've made and just look at what you're doing, right? And just kind of just more of a review, right? Nothing, I'm not judging it. I'm not saying, oh, this looks cool. Oh, this code is kind of sloppy. It's just to see what's going on out there. So anyways, automation in the wild, that's kind of a new segment that I want to do to kick off the stream. And then we'll get into actually looking at some of the topics as it relates to the DevNet expert. As always, I try to go over as much as I can during the stream. It being 1.5 2 hour stream, we'll see what we can accomplish. And I tried, like I said, I try to post things to GitHub, and so that way you all can feel involved and see what I'm working on, whether it's on stream or off stream. So, anyways, yeah, if you're here, welcome, and please feel free to chat. This is definitely I want this to obviously be an interactive stream. This is not just watch me, read through documentation quietly. I definitely like to talk to people that, you want to learn, or you just have questions, just general questions. So, all right, before we dive into the that new segment I was just talking about, let's just take a quick look at the study plan. I like to start off here and then kind of look at where we're going. So you see this week we're looking at Cisco product APIs and SDKs. This actually correlates to, I have it here, exam topics 3.1 and 3.2, where it's basically, I believe, I don't know it verbatim, but it's basically like modifying or troubleshooting SDK scripts that use product SDKs or interact with these APIs, these different product APIs. And I split the products over 2 weeks, so that's why you see it across 2 weeks here. So this week I kind of started with what I consider to be easier and what I'm more familiar with. Meraki, DNA Center, iOS XE, basically using RESTconf, and WebEx. And then next week we dive into the more complex and unfamiliar territory of ACI, App Dynamics, FDM, and Intersight. So, yeah. So tonight, like I said, after the new segment, we'll actually be specifically looking at Meraki and DNA Center. Since we've looked at RESTconf in the past, I'm not skipping over it in any way this week. I'm going to dive into it probably more this weekend. And then WebEx, I actually have a kind of a cool project I want to do with that revolves around chat ops and webhooks. But I had an issue reserving a sandbox tonight, so I won't be able to do the webhook portion that I wanted to do with WebEx. So anyways, all right, let's move on to the new segment. So I don't have any sort of crazy, anything on screen. There's no sort of, I don't have any sort of cool slide or sounds or anything like that yet. But I got two submissions, and that's why I guess I'll call them submissions. And basically all I asked, and I think I put it out maybe twice this week. I didn't do a good job publicizing it, but basically tag me in the tweet that either has screenshots and a link to your code base, whether it's on GitHub, GitLab, whatever. And that's really pretty much it. Just tag me. Oh, and you can use the hashtag automation in the wild. I know it's really long, but I looked it up because I was like, I don't want to get a bunch of tweets of like people that indirectly, may hashtag that. But I looked it up and no one uses it. So that's why I said, hey, throw that in there too. But so this week we have two submissions. One's from Julio. He's, I think everyone in stream and probably watching this VOD know Julio or have heard or seen his blogs. Phenomenal blogger. He's really good with not even network automation, but networking as a whole. I've seen him. I don't know when he started blogging or anything like that, but I've been following him since I started, which would have been, let me think, year and a half ago, like September 2020-ish. I started doing my blog, and I know he was one of the first people I started following. So anyways, Julio tagged me in it. I think he tagged me and then put like a laughing face. So I don't know if he was like embarrassed to tag me in it or anything like that, but we'll take a quick look at it. So I open up his link, and by the way, if you've been following Julio for a while, he just recently redid his whole blog site. He switched it to using GitHub and Hugo. It's the static Markdown site. So basically, all of his site is now in Markdown, and I really can't think of the name of it, and that's why I just threw out like GitHub static code. sure someone knows what I'm talking about. But basically, a Hugo is, I guess, framework that helps display this static site. And I say static site because it's literally his blog posts are all written in Markdown and then displayed using, I believe Hugo helps with provide themes and stuff too. So I personally don't know too much about it, and I'd like to, because I'm currently, I use WordPress for my blog, and it works, and the analytics piece is cool, but I really like the look and the simplicity of, like, you know, someone like Julio's blog here. Hey Nick, how are you doing? All right. So 19 minutes in length. So I said I would try to do this kind of off the cuff and just like, okay, I haven't looked at the code base at all, but because he provides a little background, especially into this EXA BGP, I don't know anything about that. So I read a little bit into this before stream. And what it does, I have it pulled up here on GitHub. It provides a convenient way to implement software-defined networking, transforming BGP messages into friendly text or JSON, which can then be easily handled by simple scripts. It's routinely used to improve service resiliency and provide protection against network or service failures. Thanks to health check backend included, Anycast DNS service failures can be detected and handled gracefully. I don't know, like I said, I don't know too much about this. I'll definitely put a link to the blog post and this in the chat. And, let me find the chat here. So I'll just put this in here because I think he has a link to, well, no, I'll just put it both in here. So EXA BGP, and it's kind of neat, based on what I've read. So I'm not going to read this verbatim. Like I said, I don't want to spend, 30, 40 minutes just on, each project. But I will say, it looks like he was reading through the optimal routing design book, the Cisco Press book, and he wanted a way to, he basically was trying to, he created a small topology to see how, he actually loaded, from my understanding, he loaded part of the internet routing table into some of these routers, these virtualized routers. And so the way he did that, though, is he used this EXA BGP, which, like the library says, is it uses JSON, where, provide a configuration file that's modeled in JSON, to do that. And he also, for convenience, created Docker images, right? So here's your Docker file, and he has the BGP config. He downloaded the routes here, and then he runs this MRT to EXA BGP CLI tool, which I guess transforms the routes from the routing table into a full BGP table that EXA BGP can use. So it's a Python file, and then he removes that zipped file. And then I thought this was kind of neat. This looks to be the BGP, the configuration. Pretty simple. I don't know. This could be also like one of the network device configurations, just the way it's modeled. But I thought it was pretty easy to read. I like that, going back to that whole like JSON look. All right, so he built the Docker image that has all of the routes in it. And I know he's using Container Lab because I've skipped ahead. So he's using Container Lab, and I think he mentions it here. Where is it at? In this example, I use Arista EOS nodes, and then Nokia SR Linux on the ISP side. So he basically has the company routers, quote unquote company routers right here, CMPA 1 and 2, and then the ISP and the internet. These are the Nokia SR Linux routers, and all of it's, like I said, within Container Lab. And so he built the Docker images, and he decided that he was going to take on GitHub Actions, which, man, the one thing with Julio is he always impresses me with, he wants to write, so like what he was trying to model was the getting the BGP, the internet routing table, like, or part of it into the container lab using, Arista EOS and Nokia SR Linux. And then he took it upon himself, he built the Docker image, right? That's like a step in itself. And then he took on GitHub Actions. So, and all that GitHub Actions does is it builds the Docker image for him, and it pushes the updated image to DockerHub. So, but you can see here, it's very easy. If you've never, and by the way, this is a CICD pipeline. So for those that are like, oh no, like, I know whenever I first was looking at it, I was like, man, I don't know, like, CICD, like, what is that? Like, I hear about it, I hear how cool it is and what it can do, but this is it. Like, he checks out the code, right? So you can see anytime that he pushes changes to his main branch, or there's a pull request to the main branch, he does a build process running on Ubuntu, and this Ubuntu image is provided by GitHub, and GitHub Actions, which that's the one nice thing about GitHub versus like other, like we used GitLab before on stream where I had to build a runner. That's nice because it has a lot of control behind it, but in a project like this, you're not focused, like your main focus is on something else and not necessarily the CI process. So it's running on Ubuntu, and it checks out the code, and it uses these environment variables here: Docker user, Docker password. These are secrets that are stored in like a secrets vault in GitHub. And he Docker login and uses the username password. I imagine that's for DockerHub, to allow you to push your changes to DockerHub. And all he does is he builds the Docker image. Docker build takes the Docker file, and then creates a tag with the current date, it looks like, and then pushes that up to DockerHub. So I almost bet that, and I'll just use this DockerHub. I'm just gonna look it up. Maybe. Well, this is the repository. Unless he took it down. You could probably, on DockerHub, if you look up his account, and then you probably can find this container under his account. But for whatever reason, you could see my internet, it was kind of lagging there. So I'm just going to keep moving on. And then he adds some more actions, so you can kind of read through this. And then incorporating exabgp in the lab. So they have the Docker image created, and this is all container lab configuration here. So you can see the images used, and then just, so he has the ISP, he has EOS, right, Arista, and then SRL, which is the SR Linux, or Nokia SR Linux. And the configuration files. And then he uses, like I said, he uses his own image here as the internet. So he's kind of using that partial internet routing table. He's basically just replicating the internet. That's pretty cool within this container lab. And then he configures the internet node with an IP address and activates exabgp. And here's the BGP configuration here with the peering, the two peers. That's pretty awesome. And you're talking about advertising and specific use cases. So now he's talking about, okay, how, using route maps, how we can filter out some of the routes coming in. Because obviously you don't want the entire internet routing table on your edge router, if you're company A. So he talks about that. And then on the provider side and traffic steering, I mean, holy crap. He's like outdoes himself with this, doesn't he? And then talks about some caveats and then the outro. So, Julio, that was awesome. You incorporated so much into one blog post. And so that's awesome. So if you're interested in reading, I know I skipped like the latter half. If you're interested in learning more about it, I put the links in the chat. All right, so that was Julio's. And the other one I got was from, I believe his name is Sohan. And he tagged me. He saw my, my announcement. And he said, hey Dan, for automation in the wild, I wanted to share something that I worked on a while back. Probably a bit too simple for your discussions. Pause there. As I mentioned before, there is nothing too simple for this little segment. Network automation is just, it's growing, as we all know. So there's nothing too simple. You can start with something as simple as running a single command using NetMiko or something like that, right? Starts very, very small. You even run a, pexpect script, right? It doesn't matter. I want to see it and go over it. And that way, hopefully my goal is, besides reviewing it and kind of seeing what else is out there, that it also provides you kind of a platform that, Sohan, you can now see and go to his Twitter and see what, he's been working on. So, anyways, it's too simple for your discussions, but thought to share it anyways. It collects some basic router device facts and backs up the configuration. And he shared this screenshot, which I know it's probably hard to see on stream, but it's basically a table. It has a router, CPU, RAM, uptime, last reload, last change, and config backup. And then the execution time. And this says 9 seconds. That's pretty impressive to gather all that information and back up the config in 9 seconds for 2 devices. And he provided the GitHub link. I don't know why I was tripping over that, which I already have open here. So let's take a look. So this script fetches BGP neighbor details such as peer status, uptime, peer AS, VRF prefix counters, and it looks like it uses Nornir. And looks, based on his imports, it is using Nornir. And all right. So he creates a dictionary to capture all the output. He initializes Nornir. He runs the following getters using Napalm. So I guess I'll pause real quick. There's a lot going on here, and I think this is a really, I know he mentioned this is a very simple script. Even if the output is simple, he uses a lot of different libraries and a lot of different tools. So I'm going to go ahead and put the GitHub link in the chat. So that way, if if you're following along, or you just want to, I'm talking too slow, feel free to check it out. So I didn't actually go into the repo. He gave me this link, so I'm just looking at this one script. But I'm sure there's more in the repo. And all right, so he uses Nornir and Napalm. He uses these getters. And for those that don't know about Napalm, these getters basically get specific information and parses it for you. It's just very convenient to use. And that's captured in this output variable. The reason is capture. He uses NetMiko to capture the reason. all within Nornir, right? So everything that has nr.run is within the Nornir framework, and then he's using other libraries and tools to capture the data he needs. So Napalm was able to grab all the information he needed for output, and then for reason, he did just a sent show version pipe include reload.reason. So that's interesting. So he figured out the reload reason by just doing your traditional, show version pipe include. And Nick actually brought up a great point. So, Sohan, I think you mentioned you may be watching this after the stream, because based on your time zone. Nick mentioned that the fact that you're using regex in the script elevates it beyond a simple script. Exactly. There's nothing simple about any script anyone creates, and whether good, bad, ugly. Like in this case, a bunch of good stuff's being used, right? Nornir, NetMiko, Napalm, regex, as Nick mentioned. So never doubt yourself that just because you think something's simple, because it's all in one file. I'll tell you, for me particularly, I used to think that some of my scripts were too simple because they were all in one file, right? Because if you go to a GitHub or anything, if you look out on the internet, you see these folders on folders of just modules and classes and all this Python code that everyone says, oh, you could go learn Python. Well, I created a single script with using a single file, right? And it's not like that. If it accomplishes your goal and does so in a way and we could use this script more than once, then it's solid. So, Ganesh, hey Ganesh. Ganesh also said Pandas. Yes, I saw that on the import, and I'll definitely get to that. Pandas is a very popular tool for organizing data. It's very popular. It's kind of like Excel, like Microsoft Excel, because it allows you to kind of read and write to Excel using what Pandas calls data frames. And I personally have not had too much experience with Pandas. I just know a good bit about it. But we'll get to that as well. So yeah, Ganesh, Nick, myself, Sohan, if you're watching, this is definitely not too simple of a script. You're using a ton of awesome libraries, and we haven't even got through it all the way. So, all right. So we stopped the reason variable, and then he created a new variable called last change. Runs another NetMiko command, or a command using NetMiko. And it shows startup include last change. So for those familiar with Cisco, show startup I believe it's at the very top. It tells you when the last change occurred to the startup configuration, which startup obviously is the configuration used when the device reboots and starts up. So that's pretty neat. That I think this is just a very cool script because it integrates so many tools, all within the Nornir framework. Don't get me wrong, it's all within Nornir, but you're using NetMiko, Napalm, and then you're also, we haven't got to this part yet, but you're capturing the data and then displaying it. All right. Now we're into a function, and the function's to gather environment details such as RAM, CPU, and the reason for last reload, along with the last change occurrence. So he captures some of that data here, right? So now we have the data. Now what we're trying to do is gather the environment details, and then I imagine print it out in a nice formatted table and I'll just actually keep this up. So when we go back and forth between the scripts. So you can kind of see the data that's being captured and the way we're capturing it. And now we're going to get to the point where we're actually printing it out. Oh, Sohan's here. Okay. I am glad you got to make it. Yeah, I hope this is a great script. So I'm glad that you're here. And keep doing what you're doing. This is awesome. For what's going on. Okay, so looks like he's passing in an env argument, and that is going to be probably the Napalm getters at the top. Obviously, he's not calling it. This is just the function that's created, and he's sorting through the Napalm getter information. Remember, it's parsed information, so just Python dictionary essentially. So you can call through it just as you would a normal Python dictionary. So he's capturing the usage, the used RAM, with the available RAM. So everything's being captured into these variables, the uptime, the reload, and then the last change. All right, and he's doing a little bit of formatting. That's great. So if uptime is in the range of 60 to 360, I'm guessing you probably are assuming that's in seconds. Yeah. Wait. No. Yes. You're assuming that if it's in this range, then it's in divide it by 60 and then add the word or the string min to the end. So it tells you how many minutes it's been up. Otherwise, we can just round it. Oh, wow. Okay. So basically, we know the uptime's in seconds. And we're saying that if we divide it by 60, we're going to get the minutes. If it's greater than 3,600 seconds, you're jumping to say, okay, now we're going to round it up to hours. This is it's such a small thing, but to the end user, that's huge, right? Because now they don't even know. They don't know that after 3,600 seconds, it's not going to say I don't even know how many minutes it is, but after so many minutes that your output now converts to hours. So that's huge. And then basically it looks like he just creates a dictionary and appends all those values that we, regexed out and parsed out of the information. So now we have a mydict dictionary. And he gets the, let's see, router list equals dict.keys of the output. And then for every router in the router list, we're just parsing out, it looks like we're just parsing out the information. Yeah, okay. So we're going through a list of routers. And let's see. Where did I see that? Okay, yeah, mydict. Okay, all right, yeah. So we go through the routers. We collect the information we need, right? And then we pass it into this function right here. So all these arguments are then passed in as parameters. It gets assigned or they get used. This is all right, and then it gets you get the mydict function or the dictionary from that. Okay, and it's used down here. Running config equals env get config running. Okay, so you get the running. Oh, okay, I see what you did here. So you're getting it from the Napalm. You're getting it from Napalm, the getters. You're getting the config, pulling the running config, assigning it to this running config variable, and you're creating a new text file here using these variables, the router name it looks like, and the start, which I gotta find where that is. I'm imagining that's the start time of the script execution. And then you're just writing the running config that you extracted from the device using the Napalm getter and then closing. That's awesome. And then you're putting it all in. That's great. Yeah, and then you put it in the My Dictionary. Ganesh says, hey, Dan, We have a project to upgrade 600 plus Nexus 3K switch software. I'm looking at options of using Ansible to upgrade it. Do you have any other suggestions? Nexus is tough because it can be in a ACI, it could be in a Fabric. So assuming not ACI, Ansible is pretty good with that. I've tested Ansible out a little bit. I mean, there's so many options. You can do Ansible. You can do Scrapply, right? You could use a Scrapply, which would be something like a Nornier kind of a scripting, right? A Python library, I guess is what I'm getting to with that. It does have me trying to think. You can use, I'm sure there's a Yang data model available. You can probably use Yang or RESTconf or NetConf, NX API. Yeah, there's a lot. The thing with Ansible, and I'll just tell you this, Nick said PyATS. Yeah, PyATS actually, it'd be interesting because they actually, I don't want to get sidetracked, but yeah, PyATS does have a like an upgrade software action you can do using the device API. You know what? Let's do device API. So you can configure objects like you would through the CLI. You use conf objects like the parser, uses the key value pair. No. Let me go here. Because this is kind of the page I wanted to get to. But if you go to APIs, maybe. There is like there are APIs available to where you could do software upgrades, and it does specific checks, and you could realistically you can kind of do a combination, right? So let's say you're tested Ansible, Ganesh. I don't know how far you are with testing, but let's say like Ansible works for you. What I would suggest on top of Ansible is creating a PyATS a test case to where it can run certain commands before and after, and it will capture all that information automatically for you. Yeah, exactly what Nick just said. I just read what Nick said. Yeah, PyATS can automate pre and post change captures with it. Yeah, so that's what I would suggest. Let me see. Verify. NX API. Copy to device. I mean, you could do things like this too, like execute, get platform. There might be a way to verify that, but like you can use the APIs to do specific, like copying a file from a server to a device. I wish I could find it. Hold on. Get running image. Okay, maybe not. There is a there are triggers maybe. Actually, software version. There's also the clean functionality. I need to look for this. What's this do? Installs a provided image onto the device using the install CLI. It also handles the automatic reloading of your device after the install is complete. Aha! Wait, that's iOS XE. Hold on. Installs a provided. All right, so no, that's Cat 9, Nexus 9K. I believe this because it's all NXOS. It should work, but I would just, obviously test this. But this stage installs a provided image onto the device using the install CLI. Install image, you would put the list of images to install and then an install timeout. By default, it is 750 seconds is the timeout. That seems kind of low, to be honest, because that maximum time in seconds to wait for install process to finish. Maybe because that's just for the install process. So yeah, this is an example, right? So you would have install, and I know it's kind of tough to see. Let me see if I can. There we go. So you literally would just say install image, and then the name of the image, and then install it. It looks like there's an assumption that the image is already on the device. So this is where you would probably use another device API to copy the image, which I think I just showed you, how, copying an image from a Linux server to it. So anyways, before we go all crazy about it, there are multiple ways to do it, but there's a good combination of, because remember with PyATS you have to build a test bed, and the test bed models a device using, Pythonically, it models a device. So there might be some other credentials, and you have to pass all 600 devices into a test bed. So there's a little work to do, but I will tell you there's multiple ways to do it once you're in PyATS. Ganesh says, thanks. So for software upgrade, we cannot use PyATS, right? PyATS only for pre and post checks? Not necessarily. Like I just showed you, you can use a multitude of these like clean stages here, but also the device APIs to copy files to a device, and then secondly, install the image, and then it will automatically reboot it. So PyATS Clean is a feature within PyATS that helps do some of this. Now I will say be careful, because the Clean feature is meant to wipe a device and bring it up on the golden image, right, of your choice. So it's meant for testing purposes, and that's what PyATS is for. So anyways, I would say I would use what you were looking at, like Ansible or something along those lines, maybe Scrappily. But if Ansible works, then it works for you. Ansible, and then what I would do is build a PyATS, a test case or test script to verify all your changes, before and after. And you could use create like a test script. You can use PyATS Blitz. It's a kind of like a YAML format. a Ansible playbook, but you can use Blitz, and it's a YAML format, and you could declaratively put all your steps into a YAML document instead of coding it out. Or most simply, you can just use PyATS Learn. PyATS Learn for an entire test bed, and it will capture configuration and operational state for all of your devices. And then you can do it before your change, and then after your change, it will do a comparison between them both, and then you get a really big diff of things that have changed among devices. But I would suggest 600 devices are kind of a lot, so maybe do like chunks of 50 for the Learn, only because it'll be easier to manage all that data, right? All that diff. So okay, now we're on that. Back to Sohan. Sohan, hopefully if you're still here, we're still talking about your script. We're wrapping it up though. We're getting close to the end here. So it looks like all this is saved. Yeah, fetching, running config. So he basically captures all the configuration or all the information that we were parsing out up here, passes it into this function, and then he does a backup here, also using a Napalm getter to actually get all that raw string. It's basically a big string, the configuration, and then he's writing it to a text file, which you can see here. And then lastly, so then you might look at this and be like, oh wow, like this is nice. This is very nice. This was all created, like he didn't do like a print and then say like, you know, put this plus dash 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 plus like this pattern in. All it is a pandas data frame, and he passed in the dictionary that has all that information in it. And so you can see, you know, the router, the host name, CPU, RAM, all the utilization, the uptime, last reload, the last change, and then the config backup. And we also know, like based on a script, you know exactly where this is coming from. This is the show version, and he pipe included some output. Last change he pulled from the startup config. All this was used, you know, using Nornir essentially with NetMiko and Napalm. So, and it all happened in 9 seconds. So very cool stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. He passed in the he created the data frame, and then he used tabulate to print it out. But he printed out the data frame using the different headers in a specific table format. So that's also how it got so pretty looking, using the tabulate library. But all of this was structured before it got passed into the tabulate print function, it passed into tabulate because of the pandas data frame. So, anyways, Sohan, thank you very much for being one of the very first automation in the wild submissions. I really do appreciate it. I'm glad you saw my tweet, and if you are working on anything else that you'd like to share, please, you know, send it my way, and I'll review it just like how I did. So, very simple. 81 lines of code, and what did we just look at? A little bit of Python, right? Data structures, dictionaries, a pandas data frame, Nornir, Napalm, NetMiko. I mean, all that just in 80 lines of code. And there's there's some white space, a couple lines of white space between some of this. So really it's less. So great work, Sohan. All right. You just cancel out some of these tabs. So what I'm gonna do tonight is take a look at Meraki, Cisco Meraki, and Cisco DNA Center. I initially, and I hopefully will have this straightened out by this weekend so I can test it, was initially going to build a pretty cool webhook. And for those that not sure what a webhook is, basically it's a receiver. Well, I guess the concept of a webhook is a system generates data and sends an HTTP post request to a webhook, right? And the webhook then takes that data in. It looks for that data, right? That post data. It accepts it, and then you can kind of do whatever you want with it. And then you can print it out. You can pass it along to another tool. So I actually built a Sohan says, thank you, Dan, for giving us the platform to share. Really appreciate it. Hey, anytime, Sohan. And like I said, feel free to submit. It's not just you don't get one ticket, so feel free to keep submitting, you know, as you create more scripts or anything interesting to you. So thank you again for tagging me in that. Nick says, something I'm doing recently is regularly linting my scripts. It's pretty cool with PyLint. Yeah, linting is very cool. PyLint is cool. I've recently started adopting the black code formatter. So doing code formatting and having it automatically format my code on save, that's really cool as well. It's so crazy too, because it's funny Nick brought this up, because I was just messing around with PyTest today. So trying, working through creating unit tests and for my code and whatnot. And like as you get deeper in the rabbit hole of like software development, right, linting, formatting, like we looked at some CI/CD work with Julio, like it is kind of crazy. It is like you start realizing how many tools are actually available to you and how easy this could be if we adopt some of the things already established for software development. So yeah, it's a very cool feeling, especially like, yeah, linting. Linting can get a little tricky though. Linting has all those rules and exceptions. So like, hey, this variable is not used, or hey, we suggest doing this. So definitely interesting though. All right. So what I was going to say, back to the kind of the webhook thing. I have it created here, and maybe we'll just take a look at the code. And I'm going to try to get this working this weekend. So I created a new, if you go to the DevNet Expert GitHub repo I have. Let me see, make sure this is in all in frame here for you guys. Yeah. So I created this webhook folder in the DevNet Expert GitHub repo. And I created this little script, and I called it Meraki Receiver. And so the idea is that, and I created, like, I already put some comments and stuff. So Meraki requires you to validate the webhook before it posts data to it, right? It's kind of like that extra security measure. So whenever in the Meraki portal, you can configure an HTTP server, and I'll just show it to you. Otherwise, nope. I'm already in Sandbox. Don't have to type in Sandbox. All right. So I'll log in the Meraki portal so that way we can see where we're at. So I'm using the always on. I was hoping to get the reservable one, because then I could actually configure some of this stuff. But for now, we'll just have to deal with the always on. And if you've never worked with Meraki, it's a very cool product. It's all cloud-based management. So unlike, oops, how do I switch? To this one. Oops. It's all cloud managed, so you don't have to log in SSH to any network devices. And so it's real easy to manage. Anyways, where I was trying to get to, let me try to find organization settings. Gets here. So in Meraki, there's kind of a hierarchy, right? So you have your organizations, which normally you don't have this many. Normally you would have maybe, it really depends within your environment, but you can do it regionally. You can have just one organization for your entire actual business organization. It really depends from a design perspective. Since we're in the always on just sandbox here, there's a ton of organizations. As you can see, like, we have ones that just say hello. So anyways, once you're in an organization, you then create networks. And these networks more or less represent your sites. And once you're in a specific site, you can then view all the devices within that site. So let me just go to switches. So here on the left side, you kind of get an idea of what devices are available at the site. Hold on. It's taking a while. So there are no switches at the site. Let me see our topology. I think you can Let's just look at the topology. I think it'll be easier than going to the different tabs here. There we go, devices. So you can see there's an MV21, so it's a camera that's associated with this site. So this actually is not an exciting site at all. Let me get back to DevNet Sandbox. There was one site that I had the other day that had a bunch of devices. When I say bunch, like 3, but let's see. I think it was this one, the Tech Clinic. Device list, topology. Well, there's probably an easy way to do this. They changed up the look, like, all right, you know what? So along the left side here, you can see switch, security, SD-WAN, which would have obviously your router / firewall. And I think they have one. I know they have at least an MX device, which is like their firewall here. Okay, so Nick says I need to get used to the other tools like Dodge and Bandit. Yeah. I've honestly never really touched those too much. I read through some of the documentation, but I've never actually like used them in my code. He also asked for a poll, Fast API or Flask. Yeah. So my situation, I'm using Flask. That's only because that's what's available in the DevNet Expert Lab. My preference, I love Fast API, specifically for how easy it is to serialize and model data, because it builds on top of Pydantic, which is kind of my new favorite library in Python. If you're unfamiliar, it's a really good library and easy to use for creating data models, which help parse and validate data. They will say in Pydantic documentation it doesn't actually validate data, but I look at it as it does validate, because it's basically just says what type of object or data type an object should be, or argument. So, and then you just asked if it's the always on org. Yeah, it's. Oh, you're saying to use the always on org. Dude, I thought they had this cleaned up a bit. I guess people got in somehow. But yeah, this is the always on sandbox. So. All right, whatever. This is not important. This isn't. I didn't want to do Meraki 101. But anyways, you got your orgs, your networks, and then you have network-wide settings. Security and SD-WAN is a firewall / router. It's what Meraki calls their MX line, their MX series devices. And I'm sure there's some others as well. It's just MX has always been like what I've known. The switches are MS devices. Obviously, it's just like what you normally could configure on a switch, but you do all the configuration through these menus. Wireless, same thing. Access points, I think those are MR, if I believe, right? Yeah, MR. And then cameras are MV. So, anyways, kind of cool. You can go through all this. I think they have access points at this one. The only reason I know this one particularly is because I use it for my API practice. Okay, maybe not. What do I know? So what I was going to show you anyways is, so at the network-wide level, so at the particular, so in this case, the Tech Clinic, you can enable a scanning API. And you can add a post URL. So basically what this does is in intervals, I forget what the interval is, the scanning API will send you data, right? So think of like wireless. You have a floor plan, and you can map out your APs on the floor plan. Well, based on that floor plan, and if all the dimensions are right, your APs could track people as they walk through, whether it be, a retail store, a corporate office, wherever, right? And you can capture data of the, longitude, latitude, where they're at in an office, really anything from that perspective, right? It's as long as it is probing, right? The Wi-Fi device is kind of scanning or probing for Wi-Fi, whether it's associated or not, or if it's a Bluetooth device, a low energy Bluetooth device. You can capture all that data from the scanning API, and the scanning API can post the data to our URL. So you could say add a URL, and let's just say you create a Flask API or a Flask application in AWS. So you could do like an AWS EC2, blah, 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 blah. So you would put the URL of the publicly accessible app, and then you could create a secret, which basically on every exchange, the secret is kept with every post request, right? So the validator string here is used to verify that the data is being sent to a trusted receiver, because the receiver has to return this validator string first before it gets any post data. And then once this is validated, then it posts data to the receiver with a secret embedded in it. So the only thing is, with the always on sandbox, you can't configure this. Otherwise, I could have this working. And if you see my code here, that's why I have a Git route. So I'm using Flask, as I think I mentioned. And this, all I'm doing is returning this validator string. I don't have it because, like I said, it would be useful in a reservable sandbox, but I don't have the validator string. But if I did, I would return it back to Meraki Cloud, and Meraki Cloud would verify, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. So then they would post data. That Meraki Cloud would send a post request to the URL, right? And the URL would just be this application. So we would just do a post to, the root basically. And this is my plan. And hopefully if I get the sandbox working this weekend, I'm going to have it set up. So we're going to take in data from Meraki. We're going to validate the secret. So we're going to pull that secret from, I think it's in the header, if I remember right. So we'll pull the secret, we'll validate that it's the same as what we have configured on our end, and then we'll parse the data, interesting data that we want out of it, right? So like, for example, you can get like I think I mentioned, longitude, latitude, all this little like intricate data, which is cool from a plotting standpoint, like to see on a map, but I don't really care. I want to know, are they on our network? Maybe what type of device it is, the IP address maybe, right? So we'll parse out the interesting pieces from that JSON data, and then we'll then send that interesting data to a WebEx team room. So, and the way we could do that is we could create a bot that has an API key, assign that API key into this application, and this application will then do a post request to WebEx Teams, right, to that API, and it will just basically forward the data. So think of this webhook as the middleman, and that's what webhooks really are, at least the receivers like we have built here. It takes in data, it parses out what we want, or what you're interested in, and then forwards and creates additional actions. So let's say, here we're going to post a message to a WebEx Teams room, but maybe we create a ticket in ServiceNow, right? Maybe we look through the data and we find that there are 10 clients that are having poor service. We create a ServiceNow ticket automatically. And the beautiful part is we have Python. We have the powers of Python that we can, parse data, change it, and then use something like the request library to then forward that off to, another API or another service using its API. So, Yeah, Nick said MR for wireless. Yep. Yeah. I think that's it. They always seem to be expanding Meraki. So I didn't know if they added any other, you know, equipment lines. So this is what we were going to do tonight. But like I said, I've had an issue with the sandbox reservation. Okay. So enough of that. And I guess the only other thing to mention here with Meraki is, so we have it says you can use this API key, and it's here. With a Meraki account, like you can see, we logged in with an email address and a password. If you had to, like, let's say you could buy Meraki for your house, really, if you wanted to. It's a subscription based, but if you had all the right equipment, you bought all the equipment, you can manage it, through the cloud. So you create an account, Meraki account, and then with that account is an associated API. So that is where, you would store that API key, obviously somewhere safe, and then you could use that to access, the API of Meraki and all the powers within. So that's Meraki at its peak. There's a bunch of other things you could do. Obviously, configure the network, push out config templates. The cameras are really cool. If you're interested in that, I don't really want to leave that, but the MV Sense API is very cool. Because these cameras can do so much stuff on the device itself, like at the edge, versus pushing a camera feed to a backend server that then, computes things. The cameras have, like, I guess, pretty beefy hardware on them because they can, like, analyze things using AI. Like, there's a bunch of things that these MV cameras can do. So that's another thing to look at if you're interested in Meraki. All right. The only other thing I wanted to look at was DNA Center, and we will take a look at that as well, and then kind of play with some of the APIs, or doing API calls through Postman. I don't mind, like, creating the Python scripts. Obviously, it's using the request library. I really wanted to do that webhook because it integrates a lot, right? You're using data from Meraki and then using that and interacting with the WebEx API, the WebEx Teams API. So, I don't know. I was really hyped to do it. Now we are going to DNA Center. So, I'm not going to go through every little piece of DNA Center because I think if you haven't heard of DNA Center before, then I would be surprised because it's one of these products that are just kind of being pushed out with almost any purchase. The past couple of years, Cisco's been pushing out DNA Center appliances. But I'm using the always-on DNA Center appliance to interact with. As you saw here, there's a few that are reservable. I probably could have reserved one or two, but honestly, not a huge deal. So you can see, well, there were 4 devices. Oops. Well, I promise you this was working yesterday. It kind of figures, right? There were 4 devices. Now there are none. Cool. This is fun. All right, let me check the inventory. Maybe it's just that. Okay, now it's just all going downhill, aren't we? Okay. Never mind. I think, if I remember right, there's a DNAC 2, right? Might be on the older version, that 1.3 box we saw here, right? Yeah, 1.3.1. I bet that's what I'm looking at. Oh, no. DevNet user, Cisco, 1, 2, 3. Nick asked it's a good question. Will you have access to any of the SDKs during the lab? So let me pull up the exam topic. So actually, let's take a quick look at that. It's 3.1 and what? 3.1, 3.2. I don't know why everything's being slow tonight either. All right. So I said 3.2, but really it's mostly 3.1. So create, modify, and troubleshoot scripts by using Python libraries and SDK documentation to automate against APIs. So a couple things here. As I said in the past, one thing with Cisco exam topics that definitely want to read carefully is the verbs that they use in the beginning. So create, modify, and troubleshoot. So it looks like we're getting the whole plethora. We're going to be building it. I don't know whether it's from scratch or from a, scaffolding of code, boilerplate code, modifying existing code and troubleshooting. So we're kind of touching each piece. It says to troubleshoot scripts by using Python libraries and SDK documentation to automate against APIs. So there are SDKs available for these products, and I actually bookmarked one. So hold on, DNA Center. Yeah, DNA Center SDK. I was reading through this last night, and it's basically, for those that don't know SDK, they call it a Python API wrapper. And for those that don't know what that is, basically all those little if you're interacting with an API, you're doing all these API calls, right? And they're all stateless. They follow the REST principles. And so what an SDK does is it wraps all those as individual API calls into functions, or like a Python object that's easier to programmatically interact with. So here's a good example, right? Let me see. Let me see where the source code had a really nice example, I thought. Yeah, so right here. So you import API from DNA Center SDK. And all you do is say, okay, API, DNA Center API, and you plug in the username, password, base URL, version, and verify. All of this together, you normally would pass in as in an API call, right? But using Python on the back end, they're able to basically hide or abstract those API calls into these functions or into these objects. So you can see it says dnac devices get device list. Well, this tells me that you're calling out and you're getting a list of inventory of devices. And that's an API call at the end of the day. But that's what SDKs do. It makes your life easier. To be honest, you may not really care about the API call or what it looks like. For tests, obviously, like exams, like you may, especially like the in-auto test. The in-auto test, it's you definitely want to know the API calls. But in this case, with the SDK, it's very easy to read. You understand, okay, where am I going to get my information from? So that's what SDK does. But Nick was asking, do you have access to the SDKs? I think we will. Now, the only asterisk I have with that is if you open up, let me pull it up here. So if you open up the list of installed Python libraries, and I'll just grep on DNA, you'll see that the SDK is not available within the environment. iDNA is, but that's not related to Cisco DNA Center. But I mean, I'll just grep on SDK as well. But my point being is, I don't think we will need we'll be logging in or using the SDK. I'm thinking more or less there might be a custom SDK that's built that maybe like, okay, so for example, you would actually have to go into these Python files, and you'd have to look at an actual code that creates an SDK. So that's kind of where I see it. Modify scripts using Python libraries and SDK documentation to automate against. So my thought and the way I'm taking this is, if I understand the API, I can easily create an SDK for a tool, or I can modify or troubleshoot an existing script or SDK because I understand what is working, at that base level. So, Nick says, like, I know with Intersight, you need the SDK to interact with the Intersight programmatically. Yeah, Intersight's a little different, and it's been a while, and that's next week's topics. Next week, oh man, with ACI, Intersight, FDM, there's a lot with that. And I don't use any of those tools that much. So I'm going to go back through some of my dev core notes and kind of relearn some of that. Because I remember with ACI, I literally learned ACI before I learned kind of the API and how to interact with it programmatically, because I was like, I don't know what I'm automating if I don't understand ACI. So I started there. I learned ACI, at least kind of at a high level, the endpoint groups and the bridging and all that before I kind of learned the automation side. So, but yeah, so that's what we're covering, or that's what needs to be covered in 3.1. So just getting familiar with the APIs and really the products themselves. Like I know I walked through Meraki NSO we looked at a couple weeks ago. It's pretty simple. This actually uses you interact with it using RESTconf, which basically is a REST API. But it's interesting because you're interacting it, as you would like an iOS XE device, with the Yang data models. So NSO is pretty interesting. Meraki, I kind of, it's a pretty simple structure. DNA Center, there's just a lot, so I got to practice that as well. And then the other products, like I said, we'll be pushing off till next week. So. So I logged in. This is DNAC 2. I'm pretty sure. Just based on like the look and feel of this one, I would say this is 1.3. Yeah, 1.3.1.4. So it's older than the other DNA Center always on sandbox, but there's 183 sites created, 1 DNS server, 2 images, 2 licensed devices, 31 network profiles, and zero network devices, 41 unclaimed, 5 unprovisioned. That's funny. There's a bunch though, like 9200 switches, 9120 access point, 3802 access points, a lot of access points, and then a lot of switches. And you see that some are stacked. This little green dot is a little stack or signifying it's a little stack of switches. So stack. Okay. Funny. All right. Now that we kind of talked about all the interfaces, let's take a look at the APIs, and I'll just kind of close out some of these tabs. I actually found this page. I've always known this page existed, but like not until I recently have been having to bounce around between the different products and their APIs. Developer.cisco.com/docs. Very, very good place to start, especially when you're overwhelmed with the amount of different tools available to you and the different products. This kind of puts it in all one like easy place, and you can very quickly just like open up a new tab, and you have all the docs for Meraki. If it loads. You have the developer hub, which then links to all the different, like, here's the Meraki SDK, for example, right? Here's the API key, the dashboard API, getting the list of organizations, .organizations, .get organizations. Pretty straightforward stuff with the SDK, so. But yeah, this is a very good link if you're interested. Developer.cisco.com/docs. All right, let's open up Postman now. So you can see my collections are crazy. I have a little mixture of like Nick Russo's collections that he provides for free. They probably haven't been I haven't updated them since I studied for these exams like close to a year ago now. So I'm sure that there's some additional requests or some updated information, but I have some of his here. I think all the ones that have Cisco in the beginning are his, and then I went through and created some of my own. So for like the dev core, I created for WebEx Teams, Meraki, DNAC, and FDM. And then I have once again, like it's a mess, but the Meraki always on. So I showed you that big list of organizations, right? And I was like, oh, there's one called Hello, and there's one called whatever. There were a ton. So pretty simple. You kind of have the root URI here, where it's api.meraki.com/API/v0. I think v0 is pretty much sunset at this point. So probably need to switch this to v1. Let's just see if v0 works. It does work, but I'm pretty sure I've gotten I'm surprised that there's no deprecation message in here. But anyways, I didn't mention this either. In the headers, you have to have the Meraki API key. So obviously you can encrypt this. In Postman, I just have it assigned to an environment variable. It's just that always on API key that we saw earlier. But the header key is X Cisco Meraki API key. And so you just need that in the header. There's nothing in the body. And then a GET request to just /organizations. And then after you have an organization, you then can take the ID of the organization to get the specific networks in that organization. So just building on this, I'll just copy and paste. And we'll just kind of keep drilling into it. So now we're down to a specific organization, right? We went from that really long list to this one org. So let's go ahead and check out networks. So we're going to the networks endpoint here. And sure enough, we have, I don't want to count all those, but you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like 8. Just a quick count. 8 networks. Now, within the individual network, now with all the networks, if we want to get specific networks, we'll just get this top one here. We need the ID of that as well. The reason we're not using any of the other fields is the ID for the organizations, the networks, they're all unique. And that's why they're used in the API call. So let's see. So now we have the network ID. So just to recap, you can kind of remove this first part. Everything to the right of v0, which, just out of curiosity, let's see if we get the same result. Yeah, v1. So yeah, I know v0 is already sunset, and they're trying to phase it out. So within organizations, we got a specific organization that's based on a specific ID. And then we got the networks from that one organization. And then we got into a specific network using this long string. Now, based on this, you can see the time zone, the name, the URL. Like if you actually wanted to go to it in a browser, it's there. And then the different product types at this in this specific network. So I'm pretty sure, and I'm doing this all off memory. If you do /devices, pretty sure it will return a list of devices. Or no, it's not devices. Hold on. Pretty sure it's network-devices. Or that I might be confusing yeah. I'll say I might be confusing DNA Center. DNA Center I think uses that syntax. Alright. Oh, there we go. It was devices. It was just hanging there for a bit. But you can see all the different devices within that network. This is a little freaky, right? Here's a device, the bedroom switch. Excuse me. What's that about? Anyways, and you can see the model and firmware. So, anyways, you can see each of these within the curly braces here are individual network devices within this specific network. So pretty cool stuff. I think, let me pull up the API real quick. Meraki API. Yeah, there's the sunset notice for Dashboard API v0. Not learning labs. Let's see. Nick says, I know SSIDs, or is SSIDs off of networks in DNAG? No, I think you're right with SSIDs. I mean, honestly, let's just check it out. Or no. Here. So this is as far as we can go, is get a list of devices. And I will clone this tab. I know exactly. I just looked at this yesterday. So to get SSIDs, you can do... Since you know the network, you can get rid of the orgs part and just look at the networks and the specific network ID. I wonder if this works. I don't think it does. Oh, yeah, it does. So we got devices. So I think this is one thing with the V1 is you have to use wireless. I think wireless is a new resource. Yeah. So whereas V0, so like just to kind of show you, V0, if we use the version 0 of the API and we take out wireless, you'll get SSIDs, right? But you use V1, it'll error out here, and you gotta add in wireless. So it's network ID / wireless / SSIDs. And you saw, like, I don't know if you noticed, but like they broke up some of the different features into additional like nested dictionaries. So, but no, Nick, you're on the right page, on the right track. Oscar says, hey guys, I think you can see the count on the header. Okay. Let me go back to here then. Assuming you're talking about the count of the network devices. Or is this here? Chant. I don't see it. I might be looking in the wrong place too. With the count, Oscar. But another the response header. Okay, so I'm in the response header here. Do you know the key by chance? And I might just be missing it, so trust me, I'm not saying you're wrong in any way. I just don't see it. Never mind, I've seen it on other APIs. Yeah, so I was actually gonna say that. Like, I've seen that, and because that's the same thing with like pagination. That's how I pronounce it. But basically, where you have certain number of results per page, and then you have to reference the next URL key within the header to kind of go to that next page. So yeah, I wish it had the count. That'd be cool. That'd be helpful. But I mean, using Python with that request library, HTTP, whatever library you use to make these calls, these API calls, I mean, you could easily do, count the objects using, count these individual objects within the list. But because ultimately this is just one big list, and then each dictionary is one object in the list. So you need to do a count on that. And if I could do, put in a script into Postman as well, but anyways. So yeah, there's our list of devices, list of SSIDs. Enable true. Here we could do. Let's see if we could disable an SSID. Wouldn't that be fun? Or enable. Let's enable, because disabling kind of sucks. So let's use SSID 1, which is Loyola Outdoor. And it's using this pre-share key, tacos 7426 pizza. Okay. So we're going to say there's that. So we said what SSID is 1, right? Yeah. Raw, boom, JSON. I don't think we'll be able to do this because it's in the always on sandbox, but you know what? Let's just see. Yeah, 404 not found. Oh, wait. Interesting. I wasn't expecting a 404. I was expecting a permission issue. So let me go to wireless real quick. That's Bluetooth, SSIDs. I also think like this left side here, I don't know, something about it. It's hard to like read now to me. Like it's like the indenting is all messed up. Oh, you got to do a put. My fault. I was doing a post. Put. Let's see. Now we should get a permission error. Yeah, forbidden. 403 forbidden. So yeah. So anyways, if you let me just switch it up here. I'll get another one here. Let me duplicate this. So I'll show you the difference. All right. So with SSIDs within Meraki, the differentiator is the number here. That's kind of that unique ID. And so yeah, number 0, number 1, number 2. So the way to edit this, like if you wanted to update, let's say the pre-shared key, or like what I was trying to do was just enable the specifically number 1. It says it's enabled false. So let's say I want to enable it, right? Guess Wi-Fi, whatever. I just want to enable this SSID. You do a put to the number, the SSID number, and then you would just add in whatever value you wanted to change here for that specific SSID. So that's kind of where you would go with that. Nick asked 403. Yeah, that's kind of what I expected, because this is the always on sandbox. And there's no write permissions. So that's what I was saying. Like, it kind of sucks, because I was hoping to have a sandbox reserved for tonight, so we could do like that webhook example and then kind of mess with it, creating new SSIDs, updating existing, and so on. Speaking like Oscar is asked, can you create a new SSID? I wish I could. Not with the always on sandbox. I guess I could try. But yeah, from my understanding, the always on sandbox, you can't create new. There's no write permission. But I'll try here in a second, Oscar. Nick says, I think there's a limited number of SSIDs per network. Okay, well, I guess we'll find out, won't we? Actually, let me go back to the documentation. So like here, so to me, I'm looking for a post, right? Like something where, creating a new SSID, and if for whatever reason it exists, I want it to fail, right? If you're expecting to create a new SSID, you don't want it to overwrite anything, at least in my head. But a put updates if it exists, right? It will still go through using a put, versus a post, it will fail if it finds, a duplicate. So like, to me, it's just like, why, like, where's that at? So, I mean, maybe a put would work, but like here, they show example. I mean, the example is, putting the name of the SSID and enable true. So, but yeah, maybe not, Oscar. Maybe not. Because I just don't see the post request. And the only reason I want to know the posts, like, obviously I could just copy and paste something that exists, but with posts, sometimes you have to specify things, or you don't need to specify specific things when you're creating like a new resource. So, but oh well. All right, that's Meraki. I know I kind of just breezed through it there, and it's mostly because I know Meraki pretty well. And if you're, I guess I'll say it this way, if you're looking to like get some practice learning about REST APIs and like how to interact with them, how to do specific things with them, highly recommend Meraki. It's very well thought out. It's easy to understand, especially once you understand the hierarchy of there's organizations, and then within organizations there are specific networks, and those specific networks then have devices attached to them. Once you have that, then the API is very easy to read. So highly recommend the Meraki API. All right, so now let's get to DNA Center. So get rid of that. And let's close that up. And here we go, DNAC. So we won't save any changes to that or that. Or that. Okay. So we'll switch over to the DevNet. I'm tripping. There we go. So let's take a look. So we're using Sandbox DNAC 2, which is fine. That's that older 1.3 version of DNAC versus the new one. The API token just says change me, which we will. So the difference between DNAC and Meraki is DNA Center, you actually have to get a token and it expires. I think, is it 24 or 48 hours that it expires? But either way, it expires, so you have to keep kind of re-upping it and generating a new token, which is actually like a nice thing from a security perspective. So we'll take a look at DNAC here. So to get a token, you do obviously the IP of the DNA Center appliance /DNA/system API v1 auth token. You use basic auth. You'll use basic authentication to get a token, but once you have a token, you just include that token in your header. You don't have to use the basic auth from here on out because since you use the basic auth to get the token, which is a little different from other things. Like, with Meraki, when we created the account, and even with WebEx, when you create an account, you get an API token associated with your account that you can then just use until you either revoke it or generate a new one. With DNA Center, you create a new token, and it expires after a certain time frame, and you kind of have to re-up it. So, all right, let's go ahead and create. And just to show you, there's nothing in the body. It is a post request. Now, post requests normally mean, okay, create something new, but you can use a post request as an action. So in this case, obviously, we're generating a token. We're not adding anything to the system. We're not saying, hey, add a token. I mean, technically we're adding a token, but it's not like, and with Meraki, if we added an SSID, we would be add data, if that makes sense. This is performing an action. All right, so we'll send that. Perfect. We see the 200. Okay. We see the long token here. The nice thing with Postman is you can highlight all of this, between the quotes. Right click, and you can say set. It's probably hard to read, but it says set DNAC always on. Here, let me see if I can. Okay, there you go. You can see it, and it has a list of variables. So here we'll change the API token variable, and now this is set as the API token variable. So if I click on the quick look button, you'll see that environment variable is now set. The API token environment variable is now set to that token string. So now we can use it to get other endpoints. So just to show you these two, one is site health, one's client health. Site health, pretty much the same path as before, but instead of doing /system, it's /intent, right? So if you go back to the token, you'll see DNA/system API v1 auth token. This one's /intent API v1 and then site health. Right. So we'll just get site health for this DNA Center appliance. And actually thinking about it, oh my gosh. I was just saying, remember when I made the joke about 183 sites were created? Well, that's a lot of data. Hence this small scroll bar. That's not too bad. San Jose, SJC 20, all buildings, all sites. Never mind. Maybe it's only because it's only sites that have devices associated with them. That would be my guess. But anyways, you can see all the data you get here. The device count. the number of wired clients, right? So you can create a script, and if all of your sites and devices are in DNA Center, you can get the number of wired clients across your network within like seconds, right? It doesn't have to be a Python script. I believe some of the out-of-the-box reporting does it for you as well. All right, so that's the site health. And so now we're going to take a look at client health. And same endpoint. Now this is the same endpoint as the previous site health because it's using, the intent resource versus the system resource. So DNA intent API v1 client-health. And you'll see this one's a little bigger of an output. There's a lot of nesting with the client health one because it breaks it up into score categories and wired and versus wireless. So you have wired. I forget the categories. Is it like good? Hold on. Score category. There we go. Score category is poor, fair, good, idle, no data, new. So that was everything above here and up is wireless. Or I'm sorry, wired. And now we're at wireless. And you see all the, poor. So that's kind of cool too because you can actually set that. You can say, okay, do this API call, search for only poor or fair wireless clients and how many there are. So that's pretty awesome. One thing to note with this, specifically the client health endpoint, you have to include, where's that parameter? I think it's the parameter, right? Headers? I was almost certain with the client health, you had to include the epoch time. So basically with some of these endpoints, you have to include a timestamp. I thought for some reason it was in the parameters, and maybe I'm doing something wrong here too. So, but there is, if you look, you'll see in the, let's just pull it up here. In the API docs, that timestamp is used a lot, and it uses the epoch time. Since we're in the older version, 1.3, we'll pull up the 1.3 API documentation here. Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm pretty sure I can just wait. Where'd it go? Oh, no way, right? You can pull up the API docs right in the DNA Center. So there's really no need to like go anywhere else. Let me pull it up. API reference. Here you go. So when you're in DNA Center, you click on, now this is 1.3. You click on like this little lifeguard donut and API reference right here. Okay. I thought for sure this would have Swagger documentation. Developer resources? No. Okay, well, maybe they did centralize it. It used to pop up like a Swagger documentation, so you could like straight up right on the page, you can look at all the API calls available. Intent APIs. Okay. API reference. Dude, I feel like I'm going in a circle right now. Ah, there we go. This is what I needed right here. I might just, to be honest, I could just like download this because Yeah, okay. All right. So get a device list or get a network device list. This will be probably the last call I make, and we'll just take a look at the output. Because I realize we're almost 2 hours in again. So we'll do one last call, and I'll actually save this one. So we'll duplicate here. Get network devices. And it's using that intent API. I should have probably looked over it or showed you. So you can see here on the left, there's intent API, which is northbound. Obviously, that's between northbound. There's northbound, southbound. Northbound's kind of your users and your systems interacting with DNA Center. And then southbound is from DNA Center out down to your devices. I guess I said that wrong. Your users, your operators, right, are more northbound. Southbound are more of your network devices, right? DNA Center doing something, and here's a really good example of that right here. So we're looking at intent APIs right now. We're looking at information that's important to us, the operators, the network engineers. But you can see there's other, southbound. I think it's eastbound and westbound as well. But just get the point. Just understand that events and notifications can get kicked off with webhooks. And maybe I'll do that this weekend as well. Take a look at some webhooks with DNA Center. And then there's integration APIs. This would be your, ServiceNow, Infoblocks, and whatnot. So ICE is built in, but you kind of get my point there. So we're dealing with the intent API, the northbound ones that we care about, the resources, the information. So that's why you can see DNA intent, right? So that kind of breaks it up for you. So DNA intent API v1 network dash device. Network dash device. And there we go. So you can see it has a response top level key, and then a list, and then within this first item, you can see how big this is. You get everything you need out of this list. You get the type of device, you get what family it's from, a wireless controller, the series, the platform ID, the management IP address. You can see if this was like the line card count, like if this was like a larger chassis, the uptime. So you get everything, the software version, you get everything you want from this one API call basically, and then you could kind of filter through it. You can, let's say you were like, I just want wireless controllers. There is a way to do that using a query parameter. Let me see. I think it's family. It looks like I already have it set. Wireless controller. But let's say we just wanted wireless controllers, right? You can set what's called a query parameter, which is basically this question mark here. And we can use the key family and say if it equals wireless controller, only include that. So based on our inventory, we should only get one device back, this top device, if it works. There we go. That's it. So we just have, you can see just one device, and it's that wireless controller. And that's using, like I said, that query parameter. But if we take that out and then do it again, we get a long list again. And, you could kind of filter it with any of these keys using query parameters. So I think family's just the easiest one because switches and hubs, like if you wanted all the switches in your network, all the routers, firewalls, wireless controllers, and so on. But yeah, I know we kind of blazed through the APIs. Like I said, I was really hoping to get that reserved sandbox for creating, webhooks with Meraki, and then sending that data over to like a WebEx Teams room or something like that. That kind of, I think that would be really interesting to do. So hopefully this weekend I'll have that all straightened out, and I'll add the code to GitHub obviously, and I'll send a tweet out, and so don't worry, I'll try to get it up and running for sure. But that's all I have for tonight. Is there if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat now, and yeah, we'll kind of send it off with any questions you may have. Nick said that you're surprised that you don't need those special codes, %20 for spaces in the query parameter. Yeah, Nick, I was also surprised by that too. I think it has to do something with the encoding, but I don't know, because part of me, I know with like RESTconf, like if you had, let's say this was using a Yang data model, you would have to include those special encoding characters, like you said. And what Nick means by the special codes, like %20. So normally, like we did here, family equals wireless controller, how I did a space here, normally that you wouldn't do that. So like, especially like in web addresses, you normally would do this %20, and that would basically convert to a space. Actually, out of curiosity, Nick, I'm going to send it. All right, so it works. So, you know what I'm thinking happens on the back end, Nick, is that it probably does some sort of, it looks, if it finds a space, it adds this for you, this %20, if I had to guess. So that would be my guess. But cool. Well, Nick says it's taking a wicked long time again to post questions. Yeah, Nick, I'm really sorry. There's really nothing. I'm kind of at my wit's end with the YouTube, because I have low latency on, so I think it's been getting better. I think we were on like close to a 30-45 second delay whenever I was just doing normal latency. But yeah, I'm gonna try to, low latency is all I can do. Ultra low latency, I think you guys would get more buffering, which obviously is a poor experience for you, so I don't want to do that. But all right, well, I guess if there's no questions, as always, feel free to message me on Twitter. That's the easiest place to find me. I'm not even on any other socials, even with the DevNet, like networking stuff, but also like even personally, like I kind of stay off of social media. So Twitter's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And, I'll answer DMs, or if you just want to tag me in something, I'll definitely take a look. But I appreciate everyone that was on tonight, everyone that kind of was here to chat. I hopefully the automation in the wild segment continues. I get more people that want to, show their power and their scripts on the stream. So, yeah. Nick says, I'm still not educated in the difference between the encodings like UTF or UTF, yeah, or others. Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm not either in any way. That was just my guess, is that's the magic is happening kind of behind the curtains with that. So, but yeah. So, anyways, I hope you all have a great weekend. And I will be back next Thursday. We'll be looking at Cisco product APIs again, but it'll be more systems and products that I'm not normally interacting with. So like I felt like I flew through the Meraki and DNA Center tonight. It may not be as quick and easy next week, but hey, that's part of the challenge. So thanks again for being here. And if you're watching the VOD, thank you for making it to this point in the video. It looks like we're just at around 2 hours. So, kudos to you if you've made it, to the end. So everyone have a good night, and I will talk to you all next Thursday. See ya.
Till I get up, time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left. The storms we chase are leading us, and love is all we'll ever trust. Yeah, no, I don't wanna waste what's left. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And on we'll go, through the wastelands, through the highways, and on we'll go. Through the highways, till my shadow turns to sun rays. And